Hello, and welcome to this lecture on organizational culture. I'm Tracy Wallach. The literature on organizational culture is quite vast. Here I will provide a general overview of organizational culture from a systems psychodynamic and adaptive leadership perspective. What is organizational culture? The simple definition is it's the way we do things around here. The more complex definitions include a pattern of beliefs, values, expectations shared by members of an organization that powerfully shape the behaviors of individuals and groups within that organization. It's the organizational personality that's comprised of shared assumptions, values, and beliefs. From a systems psychodynamic perspective, an organization's culture is comprised of key aspects of its history, the meaning people make of their work, the roles they perform, and others with whom they interact, pressures and environmental factors impinging on individual and business performance, and the individual's felt experiences of the organization and its work. So why is organizational culture important? It indicates to us in significant, though subtle ways, what an organization's true priorities are and how it accomplishes them. Culture shapes and reinforces how the organization is perceived, both internally and externally. If you walked into a new organization, could you identify elements of its culture? What would you look for? Where would you see evidence of organizational culture? You can see aspects of an organization's culture simply by entering its physical space. By looking at their logo or how the space is set up. Are there long hallways with closed or open doors on each side? Do employees sit in a large open space with cubicles? Are there personal items or plants on the desk? What are people wearing? How do people talk to each other? Do they address each other by their first names or surnames or titles? What kind of jargon do they use? What are the expectations around time and deadlines? Organizational culture is expressed formally and informally. Formal cultural systems are seen in the form of rules, policies, and procedures. They typically include selection and performance management systems, authority structure, decision-making processes, policies and codes, orientation and training such as the onboarding process, and values and mission statements. Informal culture is expressed through what behaviors are considered normal or appropriate, that is, norms, and rituals. Who gets listened to, the myths and stories that are told about previous or current role models and heroes. A common metaphor used to describe organizational culture and group dynamics is the iceberg. On the surface, you see the things we just discussed, such as the physical workspace, how people dress, the language they use, office rituals, and other behaviors. Other overt aspects of culture include BART, mission, values and goals statements, and technical systems in place to execute the primary task of the organization. Just beneath the surface, you may see aspects of the culture that are less visible, but can still be accessed or talked about. That is, people's personal values, beliefs, and assumptions, what causes stress or anxiety in the organization, and how its members respond to those. Deep beneath the surface, you see aspects of the organizational culture that are subconscious, invisible, and rarely questioned. This may include unconscious fantasies, defense mechanisms, and basic assumptions. These last two were discussed in previous lectures. Insiders may not be conscious of organizational culture, like the proverbial fish that doesn't know its environment is wet. How is culture absorbed? Culture is absorbed through both formal and informal processes. As mentioned earlier, formal processes include systems such as onboarding or mentoring. Informal processes include socialization, that is, how we learn the ropes, and internalization. Someone can be socialized into conforming with an organizational culture without necessarily fully buying in. If they have internalized it, it means that they have adopted the organization's standards as their own. Heifetz, Grashow, and Linsky use the metaphor of being on the balcony to describe a reflective process that can help someone increase their awareness of organizational dynamics by taking a step back to gain perspective on what is really happening. What can be seen from the balcony may be very different from what can be seen in the middle of the dance floor. Moving back and forth from the balcony to the dance floor allows you to continually assess what is happening in your organization and to take corrective action. It is possible to learn to do both simultaneously by both keeping your eye on events happening around you while also noting the larger pattern and dynamics. Heifetz, Grashow, and Linsky suggest the following activities to reflect upon informal organizational culture. First, pay attention to your organization's rituals. What do the rituals celebrate or acknowledge? What do the rituals suggest about your organization's adaptability? Second, what behaviors are expected and what are considered inappropriate in your organization? This will tell you something about group norms. If you think back to your first day on the job in your organization, what do you recall? What norms surprised you? Have you internalized those norms? If so, how quickly? And what does that imply about how your organization reinforces the status quo? A strong organizational culture has standards and guidelines that are widely shared. It also has formal and informal cultural systems that are aligned with each other. An organization may have one strong culture, or it may have a number of subcultures. The dominant culture in any organization is that shared by those in power or by the majority of its members. An organization may also have one or more mini-cultures that are defined by departmental designations or geographical separations. Let's go back to the balcony. What behaviors does your organization's compensation and recognition system encourage or discourage? What does your organization's chart say about which roles and functions are most or least valued? Who has direct access to whom, and what might this imply? How are departments and teams organized? Who reports to whom? What does this imply about who has input into decisions? What are those decision-making processes? What do the size, criteria for membership, election system, and payment of board of directors tell you about what is valued and how that value is recognized or rewarded? Pay close attention to what happens at your next staff or team meeting. How do people take up their roles? How are decisions made? Who is authorized to speak about what? How is conflict managed? What does this tell you about the organization's culture and adaptability? What do you notice about these organizational cultures? How do you think this merger will go? For more information about a system's psychodynamic and adaptive leadership approach to organizational culture, please see the following references. For more information, please visit my website at www.tracywallach.com.